Healing in the midst of chaos, whether it's internal or external, is incredibly challenging. Healing itself, even under the best circumstances, is incredibly challenging. So today I wanted to share with you a little bit of a story that maybe will provide a little bit of inspiration and also an important reminder. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. I don't share client stories too often. And there are some different reasons for that, mostly privacy, but had a session recently with somebody and she said something specifically that I thought was such an important thing that people often tend to experience. And with that, also coming to a realization, recognizing experiences that helped her see not only what has shifted for her in her own life, but the reality of what healing actually looks and maybe even more importantly, feels like. So if you have followed me for any length of time, you have likely heard me say, healing happens in moments. And I'd really like to encourage you to just take a moment, maybe even pause and see what comes up for you around that. Like, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret that? Does it bring up any sort of feeling? Maybe a feeling of frustration or confusion, or maybe a sense of relief that it happens in moments and not big things. But just notice. Do you feel like you have a connection to what that actually means or the reality of that in any way? And I'm asking you to take that moment because I know oftentimes, and I've talked about this before, but so often, no matter who it is that we might be listening to, or even things that we might say to ourselves, when it doesn't feel like you have an actual connection to it, when it doesn't feel like something you've actually been able to experience, it can feel frustrating, it can feel dismissive, and it can even reinforce ideas that because you maybe don't fully understand it or can't really see how it could be true, it can even reinforce ideas that maybe you're just not ready or able to heal. And that obviously doesn't feel good, and that's not particularly helpful. And that's part of the reason that I wanted to share this today. So I've had the incredible privilege to be able to work with some people long enough in which I have been with them through the process. And when I say process, I mean over time of the reality of what healing takes. And what I mean by that is it has been over a period of time. And within that period of time, there are aha moments. There are things that they recognize they're doing differently, like maybe a different way of coping or a different piece of awareness. And then inevitably, whether it's just that they're really stressed out or maybe they're dealing with something in their life, they find that they're struggling more again. And as I've said many times, that can often make people feel like they've tried it, it's not working. See, I'm right back where I started. Especially when there's things that are fairly significant, whether it's relational or a life circumstance. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people, no matter who they're working with, or even if they're just doing it on their own, that's when a lot of people will choose to stop. Maybe they just feel like they're pausing it, or maybe they feel like they're actually giving up. And that's always, I think, incredibly heartbreaking. But in my work with many of the people that I've worked with, or I've had the time to really be with them through these experiences, being able to witness the very real shifts that happen over time with practice. And one of the challenges, I think, when it comes to healing is that for a variety of reasons, but in part, large part, because of what we believe and what we expect, we as individuals have incredible difficulty in being able to see the shifts that are happening. And because we have difficulty with even the awareness that they're happening, we don't get an opportunity to feel them. When we don't get an opportunity to feel them, we don't get the experience of recognizing, of having the awareness of a shift that's happened. When we don't feel them and we don't have that awareness, we then don't have the ability to believe that what just happened is real, because we don't recognize what's actually really happened, or what it means to have had it happen. And if we don't get that sense of belief that it can happen, we can never really trust that it happens. And a big part of how I see my role in the work over time is being able to identify those shifts, being able to reflect those back to who I'm working with. And so a lot of the time in my work, they'll just kind of be casually saying something about their week or something that they're struggling with. And I will point out to them how that is different, whether it's how they've responded to it, how they feel about it, how they're able to talk about it. Something I will be able to point out to them to acknowledge the shift in that. And that's really, really important. And this is part of why we need somebody to help us along this journey. Because when we're in it, when we're just living it, we don't see it for what it is. We don't experience it for what it is. So that's a really big thing. And one of the things that just really fills me up more than pretty much anything else in life, now that my kids are older especially, is that when they recognize that, when they are able to recognize a shift. And so the story, and I really have many, but like I said, this particular session, this client said something that I know so many can relate to, and that is, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here because I don't remember her exact words, but the idea is that she said something along the lines of, I didn't really believe that it would be possible for me to feel or experience this. And if you're watching this and you remember what you said, feel free to share it in the comments. But that idea that she is experiencing something right now in her life that she truly didn't believe could be possible for her. Now, there are a lot of reasons she didn't think it was possible or could be possible. And it starts with the belief of not being worthy or deserving. Even the belief that she is responsible for things that happened to her and therefore not deserving or not worthy of being able to experience the shifts that have happened, being able to experience good things in her life. And in recognizing that and being in a place, and it's not that everything is perfect, not at all, not that there's no struggle, but recognizing that she's experiencing some things in her life right now that really not that long ago, in part because she was experiencing something that made her feel like she was in that setback phase that was making her think that it was evidence and proof that she could never get to where she wanted to be or experience the things that she wanted, to go from really not long ago at all, like I'm talking about a few months of being in that place where it's hard to trust that anything could ever be different, to being in a place where she is experiencing it. It's not just a theoretical idea. It's not just even like, okay, yeah, some of the bad things aren't happening, and yeah, these things are good, but, and I think most of you are going to be able to relate to that idea. Like, yeah, something's good, whether it's experiencing gratitude or you recognize that you have been able to shift something at one time. And then there's a but I'm not where I want to be, but I didn't have a choice, but there's still so much work to do. And she's been there. She has definitely said and done those things. But now, with that, she is also in a place where she's seeing that these different parts of her life are coming together. That there's different parts of her life where she's able to recognize some of these shifts that are happening. So not only what she has done to create this, but the feeling, the experience that it creates. And when I talk about what does it feel like when you're connecting to gratitude, what does that feeling feel like? Or when I say to connect with something and to really feel it, what is that felt experience like? It's that you're taking this often external sort of experience and you're internalizing it. You're literally feeling in your body the connection to that. And one of the things that she has said, and she said this actually a while ago, but hasn't been able to really trust it yet, but can kind of see like, okay, I can kind of see that, is the idea of connection and how important it actually is and how the experience of it can feel. And that while connection carries risk, and that feels scary and uneasy and vulnerable, the connection, when done with relatively healthy people, is a completely different experience. And not just that it's a completely different experience for that moment, but what it means for you in your life, what it means for how you can then think about and approach other things. So, as I said, even just a few months ago, there were a lot of things that this person was dealing with, a lot of objectively difficult, pretty challenging things. And not just internally, though that was certainly there, but things that she didn't necessarily have the ability to control. And this is an important part of what I want to talk about. So to go from that to where she is now is a pretty big leap. And I know for a lot of people, it's easy to say, she had this big awareness and she was able to create these changes for herself. And that makes sense in a lot of ways on a logical level. However, that is not at all the reality. And this is the thing that I want you to remember. When we think about healing and we're thinking about all the different things going on around us that are challenging, remembering that healing happens in moments. right? That's kind of where we started. Healing happens in moments. Whether it's this client or anybody else, even in your own healing, somebody doesn't, whether it's 6 months down the road, 6 years down the road, whatever it might be, somebody doesn't go from a few months ago being in this one particular place, even after working together for quite some time. And there's been other times where things have been good. She's been able to see things, but then there's a lot of really pretty significant challenges going on that create that idea that things aren't really going to get better. Somebody doesn't go from any of that to being in a place where they're experiencing things differently. The actual things that they're experiencing are different, and their experience of it is different. That doesn't just happen. That happens directly as a result of the hundreds, if not thousands, of moments that have led to that. Her being able to go from a few months ago to where she is now didn't happen because something happened within those few months to get her to where she is, though she was able to set an important boundary, not in an easy way. It wasn't easy to set that boundary, but some circumstances happened that helped shift it. But even creating those circumstances that she did have control over, and there were some that she didn't, but even creating the circumstances for that didn't just happen because she woke up one day and said, okay, I've had enough. It happened because she has worked over this time to create moments, brief, seemingly insignificant moments that have built upon each other, every single one, to get her to that place, to be able to create that boundary, to be able to stand up for herself, to not just feel like this doesn't seem right, but to eventually, because it didn't just happen quickly, but to be able to recognize various aspects of it that were not okay, being able to take the leap and have some level of possibility, at least, even if not trust, that it made sense and she was worthy and it was objectively okay for her to do. That happened because early on in our work, she took risks. Reaching out to me was a huge risk because throughout our work, she had moments where she had awareness. She had moments when she opened to possibility, even if she didn't follow through with it. She had moments when she was able to practice self-compassion, or she was able to apply the idea of compassion and see it for somebody else and think, well, maybe if it can be true in that circumstance, and I would never blame that person, or I would never tell somebody that they're overreacting in that way because of that, then maybe it's possible that could be true for me. So throughout our work together, through every day in her life since she's been on this healing journey, there have been little moments. And some days the moment might have been some small act of self-compassion or some small act of self-care, like eating. Like literally that could be it. And sometimes maybe bigger acts of self-care, like setting a boundary, even if that person didn't know she was setting a boundary. And I'm saying she, and I'm talking about this particular client, but I want you to recognize that that is existing within you as well. You have had these moments. And every little moment is necessary as part of those building blocks to get to those moments. Without these little day-to-day moments, seemingly insignificant, so insignificant that it's easy to completely miss. The bigger moments, the moments that you can recognize that there's a shift that happens, that only happens as a result of these little moments. Even when in those moments, you don't see anything changing, it doesn't seem like it's making a difference. But there will come a time, whether it's a few weeks, a few months, or maybe even a few years later, that what you're able to see or what you're able to do at that time is absolutely a result of all those other moments leading up to it. You can't have this moment without all of those other moments. And so going back to kind of how I started this video with the idea of trying to heal in the midst of internal or external chaos, I want you to remember that, especially in a time like this, it's those little moments that are probably most important right now. Now, for some people, it might be really important to set a big boundary. It might be really important to make a big decision about a relationship. But you can't get to those moments without a bunch of little moments that lead up to that. Now, if you're in that place where you need to make a big decision, there's a good chance that you've had a lot of those moments already, because without those little moments, there's a really good chance that you wouldn't be recognizing that something needs to change. Because what often happens is there might be a part of you that recognizes that, but then there's going to be this other part of you that says you're overreacting, that you need to make it work, that it's your fault, or whatever that internal dialogue might be. So even getting to the place where you recognize that change needs to happen, that's likely because of small moments that happened before that. So whether you need to make a big decision, or especially for this video, you're feeling like you're just trying to get by day, there are moments within your day-to-day life that are going to make a difference in the bigger picture, that will help you get to that place that you ultimately want to be. Because no matter what the shift is, no matter what the healing might look like, whether it's not taking things as personally, not immediately feeling this intense amount of shame, upon reflection, recognizing how you responded so differently, you felt differently in a situation than you had historically, without it necessarily even registering at the time, without even having to do anything specific to make that happen. And you often don't even notice it, but on reflection, you can see the shift that has happened. And none of that happens without that moment of awareness, that moment of choosing something different for yourself, like honoring what it is that you need in that moment, getting more rest, creating that connection, even when there's a big part of you that wants to isolate, because it would feel so much easier and often safer. But you do it anyway. Even if it's just a quick message, a quick response to a message. All of those little moments count. They're so important. And I know how easy it is to completely miss them, to dismiss them if you do notice them, to feel like they don't matter because you're still struggling, because you haven't yet set that boundary, because you're not where you want to be. But those moments are what ultimately get you to where you do want to be. And the story that I shared with you about this client today, I have had the privilege of witnessing those kinds of things happen throughout my time doing this work. And kind of unfortunately, when I haven't had an opportunity for whatever reason to work with a client for more than 6 months, even a year, or even sometimes a couple of years, when I haven't had the opportunity for that, I see changes. I can see things shifting, but they don't yet trust that. And so while I can see it happening, they don't yet trust it. And sometimes they give up. Sometimes, like if it's because I've left my practice and they don't continue to work with somebody, they don't get to see that. And that's part of the reason that I emphasize so often that healing is a process and it takes time and practice over a long period of time. We need to continue to practice the things that we've been practicing. We need opportunities to practice staying connected when we've been hurt. We need opportunities to use new ways of coping in order for that to become our default. That all is part of the process of healing. And it does take time to ultimately get to where you want to be. This story that I shared with you, or any other things that I've shared with you, it isn't something that happens quickly. Aha moments can happen quickly and relatively easily. But those are not the things that create lasting shifts. Those are not the things that create a new belief. Those are not the things that create you feeling a sense of grounded trust within yourself and what you're worthy and capable of. That happens in moments over time. And those moments are so powerful and meaningful. And there is no doubt that you have many moments, potentially hundreds, if not thousands of moments that you've already experienced, even if you don't recognize it. So I just really wanted you to recognize that for yourself. Even if it feels like everything around you is making it impossible to continue to heal, there are moments in your day, again, seemingly insignificant, easy to dismiss, that matter significantly, that have to be present in order for you to get to where you want to be and where you deserve to be. When my client shared that in that moment, I literally began to get tearful. I'm going to do it again here, thinking about it. And I get tearful with my clients when I see their progress because it's such an incredible thing to see. I'm just thinking about so many clients right now. It's such an incredible thing to witness, but also to be able to share that moment. When they see it, when they feel it, when they begin to be able to trust in the shifts that they've created and to trust in what is really possible for them. I almost got through this without becoming emotional. And you are capable of that, and you deserve that too. So I'd love for you to share with me. Reflect and share with me, share with us, because it can help inspire others too. What are some of the brief little moments that you can identify that will or have helped you to create those bigger moments, those bigger shifts that happen? Because getting to that summit doesn't happen by the big aha moments. Now, like ending a relationship that is unhealthy, that's a big moment, and that is going to move you up that mountain without a doubt. But it's one part of the journey. The majority of that journey, getting you ultimately to that summit, is the little moments, because ending a relationship doesn't happen just because you decide it's going to happen. It happens from those other moments. So what are some of those small moments for you? I would love for you to share some of those. No moment is too small. And it's important that all of us are able to recognize those small moments for ourselves. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for being here. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.